moment of silence for Cliff Seabury, who passed away and was a member of our facilities subcommittee. Thank you. Mrs. Healy, can you please call the roll?
Mrs. Avanzato? Mr. Blasbach?
Here.
Mrs. Clarkin?
Here.
Mr. Jones?
Here.
Mrs. McGoffin?
Here.
Mrs. Held?
Here.
Student representative?
Here.
Thank you. Mrs. Healy, can you please recite the calendar?
Wednesday, April 13th, there will be a facilities subcommittee meeting at 5 p.m. at the Central Administration offices. Monday, April 18th through Friday, April 22nd is spring recess and schools are closed. And Tuesday, April 26th, there'll be a school committee business meeting at 7 p.m. at the high school.
Thank you. Dr. Auger, do you have some presentations and recognitions?
We just have a few recognitions right now. I have one for Sandra Mikulski, who teaches history or social studies at Davisville Middle School. She has just been featured, everybody, on a webpage called Education Update. It's a publication out of New York City and circulated to about 100,000 people. And she is considered one of the women shaping history for 2016. So if you go to that site, educationupdate.com, you will see her story. And she does amazing work at Davisville Middle School. A lot of international travel in her work, and a lot of introducing of interesting cultures to our students at Davisville. So good for her. I also want to mention that the orchestra and concert choir from North Kingstown High School competed in the state festival and earned superior ratings, both of them, across the board. Tonight there is a grant for pre-K equipment that Karen Seitler, principal at Fishing Cove, did a huge amount of work to put together for us. So we thank her for that and for her leadership. And also tonight, on your way in and out, you can see along the stairway there we have this beautiful new scrolling ticker in the lobby, and there's also a smaller one in the cafeteria. And really pleased to have those additions to the high school. It makes the place look really sharp and emphasizes the new career and tech programming that we have for our business academy. Those tickers were part of a grant package that was provided by the Department of Education for increased career and technical education. And I know Dr. Humbert has one as well.
And along the same line, our finance students are doing great jobs. We have some recognitions here. Olivia Clark and Aubrey Foreman are a team of 2 NK students who, along with the rest of the finance class, competed against hundreds of other schools in Rhode Island in the SIFMA stock market exchange. And so they came in second, and they will be recognized at Johnson & Wales on May 23rd. And then we have Team Corral with Aiden Corral, Ashley Gray, Clara Crawford, and Keith Urban. And they placed second in the Rhode Island Jumpstart Financial Literacy Challenge. The score nearly perfect, 570 out of 600. And they will be recognized at the Rhode Island State House on April 25th. So big congratulations to the students and their teachers, especially for Mr. Garland and Ms. Giordano.
Keith Urban goes to school here? No way.
It is. I thought I was reading the wrong name for a minute. He's famous in more than one way.
Dr. Auger, presentation?
Sure. To begin tonight's meeting, we have Mr. Michael Waterman, who is our new IT director in the district. He's doing an outstanding job, and he has been leading a rollout committee and also leading our district technology committee. And a lot of people have weighed in on the planning that has gotten us this far, and we're really kind of on the threshold right now of making some real commitments to the one-to-one rollout for our students next year. Mr. Waterman will talk about the process process as it has come so far and talk about some of the details for next year. In 2 weeks, he will be back, and we will talk the details of the purchasing involved.
Thank you, Dr. Auger, and thank you, school committee. So I am here tonight to give you an update on our technology department and our rollout proposal for next year. The vision, as outlined on our 5-year strategic plan, is to advance academic achievement in 21st century skills by purposefully aligning pedagogy with the use of technology, having the end goal be to graduate responsible digital citizens. And to advance academic achievement through personalized learning, formative assessment, equitable access to rigorous and relevant curriculum, and increased student engagement will result in the 21st century skills of critical thinking, communication, collaboration, and creativity. We are currently in our 2nd year of our 5-year strategic plan. And some of our goals for this year was to increase the technology staffing to include a director and additional hardware support, to increase classroom interactive boards or equivalent technology. And by classroom interactive boards, we mean either smart boards, Aquos boards, or a projector which is hooked up to either a desktop or a Chromebook. We wanted to increase laptop carts in all schools. We wanted to provide professional development in the use of the interactive boards. We wanted to lease laptops or a comparable device for all NKSD teachers and provide professional development around the use of these devices and instruction-related applications. Next year, heading into year 3, we want to increase classroom interactive boards or their equivalent to 100%. We want to lease student devices to address curricular needs and provide all student and parent training as well as their background. We want to continue to provide professional development to teachers around the use of the laptops and instruction-related applications as well as the interactive boards. Our current classroom technology, we have at least 1 computer desktop in every classroom. We have 95 new grant-funded iPads that were distributed to the kindergarten classrooms in January. We have 4 world language carts that consist of 30 iPad minis each. Every class has access to an Aquos board, smartboard, or a projector. A Chromebook for every teacher. We have 25 model classrooms across the district that vary from grades 1 through 12. And we have at least 1 computer or Chromebook lab in each school. Our current model classrooms, we have 7 at the high school, 4 at each middle school, 2 at each elementary school, with each model classroom consisting of 30 devices. It was a competitive process with more than 40 applicants, and they were reviewed by a team of teachers and administrators. We've conducted in-district and out-of-district learning walks with the model classroom teachers, and professional development was facilitated by our FUSE fellows and our district technology coach. So our deployment goals for next year. Every student in grade 4 through 12 would be issued a device that they would be able to take home for both home and school use. The students in grades 1 through 3 would take our current model classroom carts, and they would be able to use those in their classrooms during the school day. Kindergarten students would have access to iPads at a 2-to-1 ratio, so approximately 10 iPads per classroom. We would have loaners available to students should one need repair or if they should forget to charge them or are having some kind of technical issue during the day. And those loaners would come for our current classroom, current school-based labs. We would have a Chromecast or its equivalent in every classroom. And we would consist of 15 Apple TVs for the kindergarten classrooms. Our professional development for the 2015-16, I'm not going to read each professional development opportunity that we've had, but as you can see, there's been a great deal of professional development around the use of technology. And we plan to continue professional development next year with another Google Summit happening in September, and that is a collaborative effort between the teachers of North Kingstown and the teachers of Jamestown. And this year our focus would be not how to use the technology, but how to apply the technology in your classroom. We'd be looking for some kind of cohort coaching model. What that would consist of would be an outside group coming in and working with our teachers in a more intimate and more intense fashion. And then a continuation of much of the PD that we've done this year. I mentioned earlier our Fuse Rhode Island partnership. Fuse Rhode Island is a statewide system for sharing, implementing, evaluating, and scaling blended learning models in schools and districts across Rhode Island. Fellows were provided to North Kingstown for free. Year one, we were provided with 80 hours of support, and our Fuse Fellows helped conduct a district needs assessment, blended learning playlists, a 2-day in-house train-the-trainer professional development session. This year, which was year two, we were provided with an additional 80 hours of support. Those 80 hours consist of site visits, model classroom walkthroughs, and they help facilitate the development of a one-to-one classroom basics guide. Our current technology instructional support is we have one technology lead teacher at each school, and their charge is to increase technology capacity by providing training, integration, and support for district technology initiatives at the building level. We have a web page coordinator at each school whose job is to help keep the web page fresh. And then we have a district technology instructional coach, and their job is to provide training, integration, and support for much of the technology initiatives. Our technology support, our IT staff is made up of one director, one network manager, 2 technicians, a data manager, and then beginning in the fall, we're going to have a North Kingstown High School student tech support team, which are going to run a help desk at the high school and also assist with repairs. It's going to consist of 2 semester classes, each consisting of half a credit, and there will be out-of-school hours expected to average about 1 per week. Our deployment plan. At the next school committee meeting, I'll be presenting more information and more details. But we'd like to order 2,725 Chromebooks, which are currently out to bid, 40 iPads, and 125 Chromecast.
Mr. Waterman, can you talk a little bit about what a Chromecast is?
Sure. A Chromecast plugs into a projector, and it allows the teacher to wirelessly move about the classroom and still send their device to the projector. An Apple TV would do the same, but it's meant to work with the Apple iPads in the kindergarten classrooms. Then in July and August, we would begin to receive our order and disperse the equipment to secure locations within the buildings. We would refurbish and redistribute our current model classrooms into grades 1 through 3. We would distribute a Chromebook agreement which parents would sign and return to the school before they would be issued their device to take home. And then in September, Chromebooks will be delivered to the classrooms, and the students themselves will help enroll the devices with the assistance of the teachers, administration, and IT staff. Parent communication. So currently we are working on a web page. I hope to have it out by the end of the month, but on that web page we're going to talk about frequently asked questions that have come up. Chromebook here, how to care for your Chromebook to keep it in good working condition. The Chromebook policy, which we will be presenting hopefully at an upcoming school committee meeting, and parents will sign in August. I've started attending PTO meetings this week, and I have one scheduled for each building between now and the end of May. And the superintendent's bi-monthly school committee update has consisted of videos which highlights some of the great work being done in our model classrooms. In the fall, we'll conduct rollout meetings to answer additional questions and help support the rollout of the devices. There are a number of policies that go along and support the various technology that we have in our school, including the Internet and Computer Usage Policy, commonly referred to as SIPA, and this was approved back in 2011, and this ensures compliance with federal and state laws concerning the use of all computers and the Internet, and this is also required for our E-rate funding. Last June, the school committee adopted a number of updated technology policies, including the responsible use of technology, the regulations that go along with the responsible use of technology, the log-on usage policy, which students and staff must agree and comply with for all district internet. And as I mentioned earlier, we will have an additional policy coming forward to present to you regarding the Chromebooks. The purchase and lease details, as I mentioned, we will be looking to lease at a 4-year lease 2,725 Chromebooks, along with the Google Administration Console, which allows us to help keep the devices with the appropriate apps and really keep them updated. Some type of classroom management software, what I've heard from teachers is they like the ability to be able to view what's on the student screens, and there are a number of applications out there that we're currently reviewing. A couple examples are the HP Classroom Manager and G Scholar. We'd like to purchase 40 iPads, 125 Chromecasts, 15 Apple TVs, and some spare chargers in case teachers need them in classrooms or just chargers do tend to get lost. So, students will be responsible for repair costs that are not related to manufacturer defects. Currently, pricing for replacements parts with labor would be approximately $40 for a screen, $60 for a keyboard. Motherboards, because the device we're hoping to secure just was released, there wasn't pricing available for a motherboard. Power adapters, $25. And then one of the concerns we heard from teachers was having Chromebooks that were personalized with stickers. So we did institute a $25 cleaning fee, where if a Chromebook was returned with excessive stickers on it, the student would be assessed this fee. Now, we also have an optional parent purchase insurance. This is something that there are a number of districts around the state. I know Barrington currently offers this, and it's provided by a third-party vendor with all claims being submitted directly to the vendor. The vendor would provide a shipping label, the parent would ship the device out, and then within 24 to 48 hours, the device would be returned to the child. The cost for accidental damage, theft, mechanical breakdown with a $0 deductible is less than $30 per year, and you have unlimited claims. And this would be something that is optional. Device security. One of the great features of the Chromebook with our iBoss filter, which is provided to us by Ocean, is that when students bring their device home, it'll be like they're right on campus. They're going to have the same filtering, the same amount of protections that they would have right here in this auditorium, they would have regardless, they would have wherever they're connecting to the internet. That includes web filtering, single sign-on authentication. As I mentioned, it works both on or off campus. There would be apps and social media controls so that we can control what apps are put onto the devices. And then proxy enforcement, which simply means the children would not be able to bypass this filter. And that's the end of the display. I know I went through it quickly, so I'm more than happy to answer any questions, clarify anything that I might have said.
McGovern, on the device security, do the Chromebooks have any kind of like a hard drive to store documents that are created by the students?
There is a small hard drive where students can save, and these devices do work offline. If that's what you're wondering. So if a child didn't have access to the internet at home, they can work on them offline. There's a very small hard drive.
Actually, I was coming at it from the security issue. Think of the the phone in Santa Barbara. So, you know, these devices belong to the school department, but we're lending them to the students during, for their use. But I guess there's a federal ruling that we don't have the right to have access to the hard drive contents because of federal law.
So the way the Chromebooks are designed to work is you would work on them offline, and then once you're back into a connection, it would sync. So if you worked on a Google Doc offline, once you return to an online environment, it would sync that data right with your Google Drive.
Is that the only thing they can work on is Google Docs?
That is my understanding. Google Docs, and if the application that's being used allows for offline usage, they would be able to work on that application, but the main focus would be on the Google Suite, the Google Docs, Google Sheets, Google Slideshow.
Okay. And then, like you said, they can't add apps at home or programs or anything, so it's not like a parent or a sibling could take advantage of this and use it for other things at home?
You can add, yes, you can add apps and extensions, but we can also control which apps and which extensions are allowed to be added.
Okay.
So I think it's like they don't have administrator privileges, right?
Correct.
Is it East Greenwich or others who have already rolled this out? So I'm thinking what lessons we've learned from them about like covers and screen, all that kind of stuff.
So early in this process, we were looking into cases, screen covers or cases for the devices. Hewlett-Packard came out with the 11-inch Education Edition, which is built to the military 810G specs, and they issued 4 of them to me, and as members of Dr. Auger, Dr. Humberg, and Mary can attest to, I've really pushed these. They are quite durable, and I do not feel we need the need for a case.
On the student help desk, I think it's a great idea, and I'm thinking, like the Apple Genius Bar kind of model would be nice to eventually get to, like in Burlington, Mass. It's a 2.5 credit full year, but are the students going to be able to provide coverage continuously through the day, or it's only going to be discrete periods because of the way the schedule works?
I think initially we're thinking it's going to be just a small amount of periods. There is a group of 5 of us that are going to Wakefield, Massachusetts at the end of this month on a learning walk to see how they run their student tech team. So we don't have all the details on that, and we are still investigating what other places do.
It seems to me we could move to a point where much more than just half an credit elective, and for seniors who have the privilege of driving, we could get them to the middle schools and then take advantage of students to write blogs about apps and really make this a really robust kind of student involvement across the thing. So I'm glad we're getting them involved. I see potential for a lot more going that way. In your conversations with other districts, is it most parents opt to take the insurance? Has there been problems with dealing with the insurance company that handles this kind of stuff? Do you know yet?
I know in Barrington they're at 25% do take advantage of the insurance, and the gentleman I spoke to had not heard of any concerns. And the pricing that I've received quotes from is the same company that Barrington went with.
Thank you.
Mr. Blackwell?
When you had a slide where you showed the approximate repair costs, including labor for screens, whatever. Now, who's going to be doing those repairs? Is that the IT staff?
It would be the IT staff as well as the student tech team.
Okay, and so the numbers you had up there include parts, and then approximately how long it would take for our folks to do it. Is that the IT?
It was a
numbers?
minimal labor fee. It was it was more or less to get round numbers. I believe the screen was $33.
Okay, I mean, I'm just wondering if, I assume with students helping out, and I've never seen one of these particular models. Are they, easily disassembled, kind of modular situation that it's easy to fix? So,
Yes, a screen can be done in approximately 15 minutes.
okay. Another question was, with respect to the insurance company, I think you hinted at this with Mr. Jones. I just know a lot of extended warranty companies and insurance companies like that. Often you have a lot of trouble. They're great until you need them,
Sure.
that kind of thing. They make their money and then forget it. Is this a company that, as far as you know, has a proven track record where, you mentioned they give you a label, they do what they need to do?
Yes, there are a number of, and I don't have the exact number, but they do advertise that they work with a large number of school districts. They are designed for the K-12 community.
And have you talked to any district? They have references or anyone you've talked to? Or
There are references. I did speak to Barrington. There are additional references that are available, but I figured it'd be great to speak to somebody right in our state.
okay. And so, how would that work? So, if you got the $30 plan and it broke, you'd ship it back to them, and then they'd fix it. So they're not like, is that what would happen?
It's exactly what would happen. You can go online, submit your claim online. They would email you the mailing label. You can print it out, put it on the box, and ship it out.
And then during whatever their lead time is, we'd have to give that kid a loaner.
Correct. There would be loaners available.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I'd hope that you could see what, this company's lead time looks. I mean, if it takes them a month and a half, 2 months to get a computer back, then, we need to look carefully at how many loaners we have, because I assume, that's going to happen.
Sure. They did quote 24 to 48 hours. They've usually shipped the machine back. So it's a
If
quick
that is
turnaround.
true, then that works. And now another question is, I've always had a concern about what we do with the families in the district who aren't quite so fortunate and don't have the ability to have internet at home. And I just, I want to make sure that when, kids are given the assignment, you're going to work on this at home, submit it electronically, we're going to look at it the next day when we get back to class. I'm just curious how that's going to work, and that we're not leaving out, some of the more low-income and less fortunate folks in town who don't have the same ability that some of the more computer savvy and connected families would have.
So Cox does offer $9.95 per month internet. If you have free and reduced lunch, if you haven't had their services for 90 days, and if you don't owe them any money from previous services, you can qualify for low-cost internet. Something else we're investigating is looking at various areas and setting up Wi-Fi maps. So obviously schools, libraries, you have access to internet. I'd love to reach out to the community and see if there are other businesses that would be willing to open their doors to our students, or at least open their wireless access points to them.
So Cox offers, so it's basically, so even if you didn't have phone or cable with them, they would run a cable-based internet for $9 a month for low-income folks.
Correct, $9.95.
If I could jump in on this part, early on when we were learning a lot about the Chromebooks, we learned a lot from another district, which was West Warwick, and they have a significantly larger low-income population than North Kingstown, and they were not reporting any problems in that regard. They were pleasantly surprised to find out that, many people were acquiring more than they thought the access, so didn't seem to have any problems with students not having that available.
And I could see,
Good to know.
I've never heard of that program, and it may be, the community doesn't know about it either, so maybe a side result would be that we could have some families with internet that might not have known it was available to them.
And that we do have a link directly to that program on the website that's under construction.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really important to make sure that folks know about it. Those are my questions. Thank you.
In that vein, I mean, I'm wondering, is it possible to coordinate with the town and maybe have a few Chromebooks at the library, and have like a kiosk at the library so at worst case students who are pending theirs can have potentially a place to go to work on. I mean, I know they have PCs there. I'm wondering if we can start coordinating with them to say, how about getting in on our, it's not that much money, throw a few more dollars in with the purchase and have them over at the library.
And maybe not just the free library, but like not the town, but the Davisville library.
Yeah.
Because
All the ones where North Kingstown students.
One of the nice things about going with Google for this was a thoughtful decision from a couple of years back now, and that has to do with if you're on a PC, you can still access everything. It's all internet-based, so as long as you can get on the internet, you can access all of your files from Google. It's all cloud-based, so you don't have to worry about, my stuff is on the hard drive on the one that's being repaired right now.
Right.
Josh, did you have some questions or comments?
Yeah, I had one question. So I know I've learned this in a lot of my classes, as have a lot of the teachers, and some things in Google Docs we've learned, they just don't work properly, like works cited page for MLA format, for example. You can't do a block indent. Or some of the headers at the top of the pages you can't format correctly. So what's the plan for things like that that students and teachers used to do in Microsoft Word that we don't really have the capability to do anymore?
So there are various templates online that specifically made for MLA format that can be downloaded into the Google Docs and would accomplish that end result. So there are templates out there. I understand what you're saying. You can't hit the tab space over to do it, but you can import a template that would accomplish that for you.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Wyman.
Thank you.
Mrs. Haley, do we have anyone signed up for citizens' comments? Jerry Leonard?
Let me introduce myself first. 30 years ago, I sat where you sit. I'm a resident of North Kingstown. I have been for 40 years. I'm 78 years old now, but I'm a fan of athletics. I currently have 3 children in the high school, and I've had 4 come through here, partially or whatever, 4 others. I'm here to talk about the conditions of the stadium. And I'd like to say a few things. Field hockey, I've seen the team out there in recent years with buckets of sand going around before they have a game, filling holes in the field. This is a game where you have a little round ball, it's very hard, and it needs a flat, smooth surface. Well, the ball bounces quite a bit. The track, yesterday was the first home track meet I've seen in 2 years. I have a granddaughter who's running. She came up to me before the meet and she says, "Papa, I can't use my cleats. It's like running on cement." It is running on cement, and I think there are some track people here tonight. But I'd also like to mention some other things about the condition. When the stadium was built, the school committee committed to maintaining it. And it was maintained very well for about 7 years until that expense got a little bit higher than originally everyone thought, and it was dropped. And since that time, it has slowly been deteriorating. But right now, I'd say the track, particularly, the track is in terrible shape. The field, for field hockey, and I can only speak in terms of field hockey, is useless. The field hockey team this year raised $1,800 to be able to rent turf so that they could compete with the teams in their league. And I have a list of those teams, but I'll just mention this. We had the chance at North Kingstown to have the first turf field in the state. And we were told we would then catch all the state tournaments. So we would get the gate receipts and the concessions. And I agree with what was done. Let's go with the grass. Let's not be the first one. Well, we're not the first one. There are currently 17 turf fields in the state, or 17 teams, I should say, that compete to 17 schools, because Classical and Central share a field, and Cranston East, Cranston West share fields. I would like to see the school committee, let's get going. I should have been down here 4 years ago, because my grandchildren are not going to see whatever happens. They'll be gone. But please, go out and check it yourself. Look at the field. Look at the track. Do I have anything else I particularly want to say? Well, the one home meet in 2 years. The field hockey team has been traveling. Their home games have been at the other team's fields. They have played a few down here, but it's dangerous. And I don't know how the other teams are playing on that field, but there are holes and pits and everything else. Thank you. And I hope you do consider what's on.
Chris Medoyan?
Chris Medoyan, 70 Spring Road. I'm here just to talk about a couple of the items on your agenda tonight. First off, I'll speak as a parent of a current member of the boys basketball team, and here to support what's in front of you tonight, which is the travel for the out-of-state tournament for the boys and girls basketball team. I do think it'll be a good opportunity, and I think the coaches and the parents who are working on organizing that travel have put some good things together that will allow for some fundraising. I know it's a tough word to say sometimes, but give an opportunity for those families to raise that money for that travel. So the next is, I'll put my Booster Club hat on. I am the president of the NK Booster Club, and you do have in front on your consent agenda, which is the approval of the consulting services for the track and field. I came last night to listen to both the town budget and the school committee budget presentation, and some interesting things were said last evening. I think, Dr. Auger, your comments about the current state of public schools. Mr. Jones, you speak about charter schools, and we talk about that competitive environment, and the winds of change are out there about how you can make your choices. I think we see that competitive nature on a day-to-day basis as we fight for the right for or the opportunity for students from Jamestown to come here. I quote in some of my things when I put out in the Booster Club that I think Mr. Haig speaks of it as well, is, although athletics might not be the most important part of the education, it is the front porch of your school. And I think as a town, we need to understand that we are fighting every day to keep families here in town, and by having top-notch academics, band, and I think athletics is an important part of that as well. And as Mr. Leonard spoke, the stadium, which was probably state-of-the-art when it was put in place over a decade ago, has seen deterioration. That track does need to be repaired, and the turf field, as we said, the Booster Club and our members are willing to assist in going out and figuring out ways to make that possible. We clearly understand the financial impact and the budgets and all that goes into something of that endeavor, probably over $1 million, but we want to work hand in hand with both you, the school committee, and the town council to figure out how to make that happen. It's not going to be easy, but we're willing to do that. So I'm hoping you vote in favor of at least getting this consulting services done so we can see what the true cost is, and then hit the ground running and make that happen. So thank you.
I can disclose that there were no votes taken at the executive session. Can I have a motion to seal the executive session minutes of April 12th, 2016?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Are there any exemptions to the consent agenda?
Yes. I just want to do D4 real quick.
Can I have a motion to approve all other items on the consent agenda except D4?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Mr. Jones, D4?
Yeah, I'll start with a motion to approve D4.
You make the motion, so second.
Thank you.
Discussion?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Clarkin. Folks don't know, I mean, maybe Dr. J, you could just speak to a little about what RISAS does and that stuff.
Sorry about that.
Oh, could you speak to what RISAS does for us and that we get funding for it, and that just real briefly, or Mary or Dr. Humbert?
So that's the service that provides for student assistance, and we have assistants at the high school and at the 2 middle schools. They handle the sensitive and confidential issues that students are grappling with in regards to substance use, relationships, all kinds of struggles, and they are involved in seeing the students in the cafeteria, making appointments with the students, supporting them, and they are. We receive federal funding for a good portion of about 50%, probably maybe 40% of the salary.
Thank you. So the reason I just exempted is to bring up, our point when we have goals like improving graduation rates and student success stuff. It's services like these that are really critical, and these are often the students who need that kind of support for us to help get them over the hurdles, given the other challenges they face. And so I had just asked Superintendent and Dr. Humbert and Ms. King if we can look at if there's any flexibility to either expand this contract or find other ways of providing additional support, especially at the high school, going forward.
I'm happy to look into that.
Yeah. Thank you.
I just have a question, Dr. Humbert. How do students know that this service is available when they need it?
Well, I just will go back to my days as a middle school principal when we had student assistance, a counselor in our school, and he made himself, introduced himself to the students at the beginning of the school year. We had general assemblies where he introduced who he was and that he was there for the kids. And then after that, he just worked his magic by coming in the lunchroom. Now, this was middle school. Came in the lunchroom and sat with the kids, went from table to table, and even got involved in some of their after-school activities. So they got to know him and to trust him, and it was a very successful program.
And in my former days as a high school administrator, and I know here at North Kingstown High School, a referral could come from just about anyone, a guidance counselor, a parent could be calling in, other students who are friends with the student who they notice is struggling could come from the deans or administration or a teacher. So it's just nice to have this resource available when needed.
I agree.
So, yeah.
I think students at a very vulnerable time in their life could be in a place where they really need help, but don't know where to turn. So I just want to make sure that they...
And one thing I forgot to mention is it may not be necessarily the student who's having the issues with grappling with the things that I mentioned, but it could be that they are children of their parents are involved with either drinking or substance abuse.
Yeah, so I thank you, Dr. Zade, for looking to see if that's an area we can maybe expand our services if possible.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Before we move along, since we've just approved the consulting services for the high school athletic fields, since we have Mr. Haig here, maybe you can come up and tell us what's involved in the process and just give us a brief overview.
We have, the school committee has the packet, but I know a number of people are here tonight for this reason, and I think it's good that if we could kind of explain to them a little bit about what we just approved.
Do you guys have any questions before? Or like anything specific to address?
I guess one question I would have is, I know that there's a time frame for submitting the grant to DEM.
Correct.
Do you think we're going to have enough time to meet that deadline?
I do. We spoke with both vendors before, during the bid process, before we set it out, and explained to them that deadline, and neither of them seemed to have a problem working with that. So we fully expect to meet that deadline.
If for some reason we were unable to, is this a one-time grant, or would this grant be available next year at the same time?
It depends on funding from DEM. So they fully intend to do it every year. They said the same thing last year and then re-upped it. It's how much money they get from the federal government is how much they decide to release the programs for the following year.
So this would essentially define the project.
Correct. So really there's a few parts that come out of this. One is a full study of exactly what needs to be done from a wetlands impact, because we have some wetlands over there. Usually DEM is in huge favor of projects like this because all the fertilizer and things that go on lawns aren't leaching into the wetlands anymore. So it's always a positive thing, but you still have to go through the process and do soil evaluations and things like that. So that's one part of it. The second part is to actually come up with a visual diagram of what the field would look like and what the hammer cage would look like moved and how it would open up different fields, and come up with an architectural rendering of, like a CAD drawing of what the new stadium would look like. That piece in itself would be then used in marketing material to develop something to go out and solicit money for. So that's the second thing. The third thing is just to develop the whole scope of the project. Some of it is to determine, where to reconfigure a lot of the track things that we have out there to make it a better venue for visitors and kind of get our hands around the whole scope of it and what's possible. Lastly, we had a company come out 2 years ago to look at the track, and they said at that time that the track should be resurfaced every 6 or 7 years. It's never been done, so we're in year 14 of that. So they looked at it and thought the surface of the track was okay to do a rip-up and new rubber come down. That's going to be reevaluated now. They'll take certain core samples from around the track and figure out the base layer and the structure underneath, and that can have a big impact on the overall cost of the project. But until you do those studies, you don't really know. No company that I talked to that did tracks would guarantee a resurface if they did it for more than a few months, basically meaning don't do it. So we would have to pull up the rubber, put new rubber down, a full new surface. If the underlying base layer needs to be torn up, if that's shifted at all, that's where the cost would go up from there. So they don't think that's necessary because we don't have any cracks in the track as of yet. However, that was 2 years ago, and they said that it was about a 2-year time frame, that they would feel comfortable saying that. So we're kind of coming to the end of that. So that's another part of it. I think the other piece that we're looking forward to is just kind of coming up with more details for the DEM grant and being able to submit that information and see where they're at with that project.
I just have a question for him. So, just wanted to, thank you and thank the Booster Club and all those who have been, involved in getting this going. I appreciate the comments that were made, but maybe one of the things of delaying a little is learning a lot about turf field and other stuff. So, they'll be able to sort of bring that knowledge of where that technology is evolving as well, right? In terms of what you hear in the news and maybe stuff that other schools are going to have to rip up theirs if certain things happens. We might actually have a little advantage from being late.
There is, and there's a lot of medical studies out there being completed within the year, to deal with some of the health issues, concerns, and there's a lot of alternative products that do deal with those. So, when we say we're studying turf, it's not that we're looking at that as the only viable option. There's a lot of turf alternatives out there that have, zero environmental impact, that do not use rubber, that, cost a little bit more in some instances, but, have a biodegradable aspect at the end that has no cost to actually get rid of it. So there's a lot of positives out there that we need to look at, but it doesn't mean that this study is for just that particular type. This is still very open, and it is good that a a lot of these studies. The Washington study is the one everyone's got their eyes on, and that's supposed to be done by the end of 2016. So,
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Haig.
thanks.
Can I have a motion to approve the basketball tournament out of state?
Did we do, I'm sorry. Oh, yeah, we did do personnel. Okay, I'm sorry.
Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll second for discussion.
Discussion.
Mr. Haig, come on up and talk, answer some questions.
Would you mind coming back up, Mr. Haig? Thank you. Mr. Jones?
Well, I thought Mr. Haig was going to explain.
I can explain, yeah. I know, some of what you guys have in front of you. So this is a trip that KSA Events puts on. I believe to date there's 220 schools signed up to play basketball down there, girls and boys. We've had teams do this in the past. There are other Rhode Island schools that do this. Some of the issues that arise are, is the fundraising going to impact, the fundraising that we already do with teams? And myself and Dr. Mansouri have met with the teams, and we don't feel like it is. The types of fundraising they're doing is reaching outside the community, a lot of it. I think there's always going to be a little overlap, but they've done their best to mitigate the risk associated with, pulling this kind of money out of the community. And, one of the events is a golf tournament they're planning in the summer, and most of the people that go to this golf tournament are not the types of people that donate to our booster club, or that, we're not doing any door-to-door fundraising like some of the other teams do. So I don't feel like the fundraising, while it's, certainly a large sum of money, I think it's not going to have a majority of an impact on what we currently do. Second thing is, because of that fundraising, there's a lot of kids, like at the end of the day, I don't think coaches are excited on the top of their priority list over Christmas to take a bunch of kids down to Florida. They're doing it because they think it's a great opportunity for the kids. It's not Coach Thomas's dream to wear Mickey ears and walk around down there. I think he really believes this is a one-time, thing for these kids, that because of this fundraising, many of these kids would never be able to afford a trip like this. So, the cost to them is going to be very minimal, and from a fundraising perspective, they need to be involved in it, but they don't have to. They're not putting a cap like, you need to do this or your number is going to be 1,200. There's going to be no one excluded. So we feel like it's a great opportunity for a lot of these kids to see something that they would never be able to see, as well as the competition's really good, and it's interesting. It's always neat to play. I did things like this when I was in high school, and it was neat to trade jerseys with T-shirts and stuff like that from your local school. So I think it's a great experience for the kids. Lastly, the big concern is it fair? Do we pick the teams ahead of time? And that's a big concern, obviously, because it's a public program and you want everybody to feel like, they're part of it. And I've been to the meetings. I've heard them say to the kids, whether you participate or not, whether you go or not, has no bearing on you making the team. I've heard them explain to parents, you can pay the entire amount and not do any fundraising, or you can, they're making it as flexible as they possibly can. With that said, they don't know what the team's going to look like next year. So it is possible that kids are involved in fundraising and then do get cut from this team, and that's been explained to the parents. With that, they've had several things put in place to be able to address that. One is that the kids can buy insurance. So if they're putting money down on this trip, the insurance is $89 and they'll get 100% of their money back. Two, if the kids get cut from the team and they've participated in fundraising, they can come along as a manager. They call them tag-alongs. So they wouldn't be playing, but they can go down there and still experience with the kids, go into the park and do all the things that the kids are going to do when they're down there. So, there's no way with 220 teams going down there, everybody faces this issue, and this is the best way to do it. And I think these coaches have put a lot of thought into making sure it's fair. And you have a survey in front of you. I think the parents understand that as well. And they've done a pretty good job, I think, of explaining that and open themselves up for discussion. And look, there'll be no, we don't penalize kids. Give us the questions, let us know, and we try to, lay it out. And I've even heard the coaches say, look, give me a call right now if your kid played for us this year. We can tell you, they do evaluations with the kids. These are the skills you need to work on in order to make the team next year, regardless of the trip. So, if you're questioning whether your kid's going to make the team next year, here's their evaluation, here's the things they need to work on, and here's where we feel they sit in our team right now. So with all those things said, Dr. Mincer and I sat down with the coaches, and we feel like it's a great thing for the kids.
Mr. Jones, did you have further questions?
I had a question, I think was answered, but so KSA provides comp for so many participants.
I believe it's 20, correct?
So how will the teams use that?
So for every 20 kids, what he's talking about, every 20 kids that go, they'll comp one person, or they'll give you the dollar value of that one person. So that dollar amount will just go back into the total fund and reduce everyone's ticket. Not plane ticket, but overall, ticket for the trip.
Oh, and did you explain about the cost? Who's covering the cost for coaches? And
So the coaches fall under the same plan as the kids. So they're doing the fundraising, they're participating in all the fundraising. So, they're in a big bucket along with the kids. So I believe there's 2 basketball coaches going from each team as of right now. I'm not sure on the girls' side. 2. And we have some tournaments running over the thing, so a few coaches are staying back to run the tournaments.
Mr. McGovern?
I have 2 things. One, the school department in general, since I've been a member of the school committee and paying attention to these things, I think is very good at being sensitive about labels. And you just said something, I had read it previously, about the students who might not make the team. Going as a manager, I think that's great. Calling them a tag-along, I think is horrible.
That's the KSA term for it. I didn't want you to read that in your packet and not wonder what it is.
A manager is great. An extra, they shouldn't call them that. And I have a question for our attorney. By approving this, is the school department or school committee taking on any liability?
Of course. I mean, anybody can be sued at any time for anything. So if you get involved by approving it, there's always the potential that somebody can sue you. However, I mean, is it going to stick? How involved are you going to be? The fact that you're not putting any money into it certainly would diminish your liability. But as the lawyers know, anybody can be sued at any time. So by approving it, you're kind of picking up a piece of the responsibility.
So no.
Yeah.
Well, rest assured that in the event of anything that ever happens with any student that is even tangentially involved with anything that has anything to do with a school activity, and something happens, the North Kingstown School Department is going to be named in the suit. Yeah. It's an absolute gift. It's the way of the world.
I just had to ask. I'm not. You said that you are familiar with this kind of activity with other schools, and my kids were athletes, primarily soccer and dance, and did a lot of travel, but with their teams outside of school. They never traveled with a school team, although Dr. Roger mentioned that it's not uncommon for marching bands to travel to a parade or something.
It's a lot of work for the coaches and the parents, so I think that's why you don't see a lot of teams do it. I coached for 10 years, and I never did it just because of the amount of work, and I used to get those things and think, wow, what a great thing, and I was never willing to put the work in. These guys are, and the parents are, which I commend them for, but, there are other schools that do these things. Is it common that 20 people go a year from, Rhode Island? No, but there are, teams represented every year in different sports. It's not just a basketball thing. They have these events for pretty much every high school sport.
When did the basketball season not start from Ryle, but actual games start last
I can't give you an exact date, but the season it starts practicing, right around Thanksgiving, like the weekend after Thanksgiving. It's always 2 weeks before a league game. There's a few scrimmages and things like that, but you can say fair enough the second week in December.
Yeah, I guess one general concern, which I guess really is for the coaches and you all to consider, is that you'll have team that's playing in the league and then potentially go to a tournament, it will not be the same players potentially who have just started competing in the league and then will come back.
Understood.
And I mean, it just seems like an in-season thing to have if it was before the start of the season or the preseason stuff, it just seems a little, I won't say odd, because maybe
I think that's why they surveyed the parents.
But
They wanted to get, I think 23 girls, maybe 22 boys' parents responded, and it was overwhelmingly positive. So I think most kids that make the team are going to want to go to this. And I don't think many parents are going to have the guts to tell their kids that they can't go. Because, that's the piece I get, like, well, how am I going to tell my kid they can't go to Florida? Because the kids want to go. I think it's a really good experience for them. So I agree. It is hard if that were the case where half the team were going down there, but I've yet to see that. So,
So you'll say we'll be, because we normally run a Christmas tournament here, right?
We run a freshman tournament here, and the girls' basketball team does a tournament usually over Christmas.
So this year the girls won't be doing a tournament?
No. And it's a 4-team tournament. They're not, they're not big. It's not like 30 teams are coming here. They have, they play. They have the semifinals, first and second, third and fourth for the girls. Freshmen, we have more teams than that.
Could I get I'd like to get a process kind of clarification. So I have no problem if, this came forward to the school committee for approval and whatnot, but in reviewing the policies that we currently have, Dr. Auger, myself, and our in-house resident expert on policies, Karen Nutini, this did not fall under something that needed to be approved by the school committee. And again, it does not matter to me, except what matters to Mr. Haig and I is process going forward. And I'd just like to ask you to think about clarification. Possibly this is something we need to bring to the the subcommittee policy subcommittee, if there is a change that wants to be made. The way we interpreted it was that there are no school funds that are being asked for, as well as this is not a during school time event. So again, I'm not asking, I have no issue except clarification on process going forward, because we have not brought something like this to you in the past because we didn't feel that we had to. So I would ask that of the policy subcommittee.
Well, I would agree because, as we've sort of discussed, we have a policy on fundraising where this, I would say this more applies. We have a policy on field trips where this, I guess, is being brought forward. We have a second policy, a third policy sort of for athletics. It's really, I think, should sort of capture more of this. And I agree, we probably need clear delineation, and most of this probably needs to be approved at the administration level under that thing. I do think, given the dollar value of this and some of the concerns which have been addressed, the competition with other teams, the precedent it may set, the expectations, the potential, given our budget, which we don't have yet for next year, where teams may need to be fundraising just to compete in in their basic competitions, let alone where we've had sort of teams that have been able to fundraise and buy extra stuff and do this and go on these trips. So I do agree. I think there's probably 3 or 4 areas that need to be holistically brought together and made consistent and clear.
Yeah, I've reviewed the policies because that was a question as to whether approval was necessary, and to use a phrase that I use at work, they were not necessarily artfully drafted. They are sort of inconsistent in some places, but there was a particular section that talked about, with respect to a out-of-state athletic event, that school committee approval would be required prior to the initiation of any fundraising efforts, and that I agree with Mrs. King that other parts of that policy really make it look like that policy was really talking about, oh, don't come to the school committee looking for money for an out-of-state tournament. But it does have that section that says, but you still won't do any fundraising until you've got school committee approval. So I think we need to get the committee to come to a consensus as to what we want the policy to do. But I think that's a conversation for another time, but I think we need to put that on our radar. With respect to this particular tournament, I do have some concerns about it just because, frankly, it's a pretty extravagant trip. It's a bunch of kids. They get to, not that I wouldn't have wanted to go to. You're going to Florida, you're playing some basketball, you're getting, I think it's 4 days at Disney. That's a lot of fun, but we're also hitting up. Maybe it's not our typical pool of boosters and donors, but we're asking a group of people to fund a North Kingstown school activity for a trip that has a lot of in addition to playing basketball, you're going to Disney for 4 days. So there's certainly a non-basketball, non-academic component to this. And I just want to be cautious that, we have a limited pool of donations and money out there, and I just want to be sure that we're not putting us into a situation where our donors are looking at it and saying, why am I giving money to North Kingstown kids? They're sending this whole team out to Disney World. Obviously they've got money to burn. And I want to be careful about that going forward. And I also worry about inequity among teams. It's great that the coaches of the basketball team have taken this on, but you've got a whole lot of other teams that aren't going anywhere. There's nothing magically special about our basketball team that means that they deserve to go to Disney, and the football team does not, for example. So, I'm going to vote to approve it, but I think it's something that we need to think a lot about going forward, and I worry about it if it starts to become a problem. Those are my concerns.
So I have a question about the policy then. What are we approving? Are we approving that they're fundraising for this? Are we approving that they can go? Is it a field trip, or
Approving them to give them the permission to fundraise, and then the administration gives them the approval to take the trip.
Because without the fundraising, they can't take the trip. That's the reality. Because there's a section of the policy that specifically says that I'm trying to pull it up quickly, but off the top of my head, for a out-of-state trip that school committee approval is required, there's one little paragraph in the middle of other things that says that school committee approval is required prior to the initiation of any fundraising. So I think that really is what it is to start with, because, as I said, frankly, without the fundraising, you're not going to be able to go because we're not going to be paying for it.
We have a motion and a second.
I just add one, not for you, Mr. Eddie. I would just clarify, in the packet, we did not get the signed approval thing, so I guess I don't want to amend the motion, but maybe we need to say contingent upon receiving the signed.
I can tell you that it has Dr. Mansieri's and my approval.
Just for the record.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Mickey Mouse ears. Can I have a motion to approve the allocation of the healthcare pool member equity distribution? So moved. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. And I have a motion to approve the award of the Fishing Cove Pre-K grant.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Discussion.
Discussion?
Yes, thank you. So I would echo Dr. Auger. It's great. We have folks writing grants and approving it, and I thank the administration for clarifying, since the award currently is short of the budget, how we're going to fix it. I just have one question, that any items we're purchasing are not permanent fiction to the school. In other words, the tubbies or whatever are available to be moved.
I'm sorry, Mr. Jones, could you repeat that?
Yeah, my question is, the items that are being purchased with the grant are not permanent fixtures to the school?
No, it's really, the items are to help supplement the program itself. The big thing are cubbies. Yeah, I guess you could say they're permanent. They do last quite a long time, but that's one of those things that I think you hear all the elementary school principals are always looking for.
Bolted to a wall in a way that's
Not at all.
difficult to move.
Physically, yeah.
No,
Yes, okay.
nope, not at all.
That was my one question.
Nope.
Thank you.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Can I have an approval of the Wickford Middle School softball field conversion donation?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Before we do that, Dr. O'Shea, do you mind just taking a quick moment and explaining a little bit about this? Because I don't think...
It is Howie Haig night here at the school committee meeting, and he is our go-to person for this item as well. So this is the Wickford Middle School softball field conversion. If you could give a brief explanation of how this has come in front of us.
Sure. So when I started here 4 years ago, one of the issues that Coach Pickering brought to me was that her field was a baseball field. It was basically put in as a Little League baseball field. And all softball fields, certainly the ones that have been built in the last 10 years, have what's called a skinned-in field. It has no grass. The reason for that is the balls come off the bat so fast in fast-pitch softball, which we didn't have when I was a kid, that when they hit the grass, which the kids play a lot closer in softball than they do in baseball, the balls fly up and hit people in the face. We had a couple kids get hit in the face in the last couple of years. So it's been a big safety concern. It's a job a little bit bigger than maybe our guys can handle in our own, grounds crews. So we have a parent this year whose daughter's on the team, and he owns a company called Kaiser Tree Service, and he's volunteered his workers, his dump trucks, and everything else to go in and lift the loam and the grass out of the infield area. We're going to put sand on top of that, and then we're going to put clay that the school department has for baseball fields that we have. We're going to, put on top of that and grade it out. So, it's not going to be the best field in the state, but it's going to be a lot better and it's going to be safer. So, based on the approval tonight, he's ready to start work on it as soon as tomorrow. So,
I think it's safe to say that we owe a big thank you to the Kaiser Tree Company.
Yeah, it's very...
folks involved in helping us out here. Thank you.
Ms. McGowan?
So this clay that we're putting in is not ideal. Would you use an infield mix like they use for baseball?
It is an infield mix. It's a clay infield mix. The stuff that we've used in the past for Lischio Field is a little higher grade, but it's also a lot more money. And at the end of the day, it's a middle school softball field. We're not trying to make Fenway Park. We're just trying to make a nice playable surface that we can grade after practice with a screen. Doesn't have rocks. It is made for baseball, what we're putting on there. It's not. It's what Dave Young buys for our baseball fields. That's why we have a pile of it. And the sand is going to go underneath it to help with drainage. So,
Thank you.
welcome.
Don't go too far, we might need you again.
No, he's done.
So I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Mrs. King, do you have anything to report for the 2015-16 school budget?
No.
So we have two policies on the agenda this evening for a vote of approval. We have, can I have a motion?
Would it be two first read? What's a revision to an existing policy? I have no problem. I'll say, I personally would rather table it and do one more round. Yep, no, I agree with that.
Okay, which one are we tabling?
Hold on, we won't do it yet. So
Let's do them in order.
Yep.
Okay. So we have a second reading of the assessment policy, ILBB. Can I have a motion to approve that policy?
So moved.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And with regard to policy BE, would we like to table this?
So I'd like to make a motion. Let me just make sure. I know what this policy is. There's no urgency to this from anyone in the administration if we wait one more meeting. I didn't think so from what it is. just a lot of changes to this particular policy. I have read through it, but I would like to get more comments. I know Mr. Jones had some comments to it, and so I'll make a motion to table that to our next meeting.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. The next item on the agenda is the correspondence to the town council. Can I have a motion to approve the correspondence to the town council?
Motion to approve correspondence to town council regarding budget timeline process.
Can I have a second?
Second, and discussion.
Discussion?
So, I understand the language of this memo explaining this request, but from my limited experience here, I thought that the issue was the other way, that we wanted to wait until we knew more about the state funding before committing to a budget. So this is going to be the opposite.
This is Mr. Jones' proposal. Mr. Jones?
Yeah, well, first of all, I want to thank Mr. King for helping craft the language, too, in this. I think the point was to give us more time. You're right, in the sense of, I think it would have been ideal to ask the town council to wait later, but you're trading off, given if they make changes, the amount of time then we have on the reverse. So the language is simply asking the town council to convene the charter commission. It may not be this language they adopt, and I agree, maybe it's a discussion of changing it on the back end, but I think as written in the charter now, there's sort of two issues. One is the kind of arcane language about 36 days and blah, blah, blah. And the second is simply, it was, I think, written in a time when you had to either, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. King, but like publish it in the newspaper, print hundreds of copies of the budget so people could physically come get it and look at it. And, with the advent of technology, that's been able to be compressed. And I also think, from recent experience with the town council, maybe last year being a bit of an outlier, but, their first read and adoption of their preliminary budget is usually perfunctory. And so the point being is can we give us a little more leeway on that end and ask them simply to consider ensuring that it's, in budget, it doesn't create a deficit, and then let them compress then that work they do in terms of public comment and others, and then give them also a little more time in terms of reviewing and stuff. So it may be that there's other options. I just think that it's an issue that the Charter Commission should take a look at, given different things could be done.
And Mrs. McGovern, I agree with you. I would like to see a little more time on the back end, because really, when we get our final allocation from the town, it's very early May. We have limited time, especially if there are big cuts or big discussions. But Mr. Jones and I spent quite a bit of time on this. It's a much more narrower time frame on both ends than what you really think. When you're really mapping it out on a calendar and looking at what we need to do, what the town council needs to do, because they need their time in there as well, it's a very tight time frame. There was very little either way that I thought we could really, that Mr. Jones and I thought we could impact dramatically either way. It was more of squishing it in the middle a little bit.
Okay. Just from the comments I had heard previously.
Because I really did want more time on the back end, and it really only has gotten us a little bit in the middle.
Well, and I also think, we'll see. Obviously, there was discussion last night for the town to consider a financial thing. I think that would have to be a charter review. I know Ms. Larkin has, thought about, and we've all sort of thought about now with the 4-year experiment with the size of the committee, and even the town council could look at that. It may be healthy for the town council to ask the charter commission to set themselves up, over the next few months and take a look at a bunch of issues, this being one of them, in advance of the November election, so.
And also, discussion for a different time, and I always preface this with nothing against my colleague, Ms. McGovern, but I do not like the way our current charter reads with respect to vacancies on the school committee. I just think it provides an opportunity for the town council to appoint someone to a 4-year position, and again, it's not personal.
I understand.
It's the process. You effectively have a 3-year and 9-month term without ever having to run for office, and just as a democratic process, I have a problem with that, so I think they need to look at that as well.
As Mr. Jones said, my concern has always been the movement of the 7-person board down to 5. I mean, we've had, with all of our external work commitments and other issues, sometimes it's very difficult to get a forum together with all of the meetings and all of the conversations that we have to have. So I think that's something that should be revisited as well. So I have a motion and a second. Do I have approval to send the correspondence to the town council?
Aye.
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 Motion passes.
Mrs. Clark, and I'll get you a copy that does not have draft on it, so you can sign that and maybe scan it back to me.
Thank you, Mrs. King. The last item here, reports. Is there any discussion?
I just have a comment. I mean, I know there was comments last night about maybe transparency or information or correct information or not. And again, I would say, go to the website, or I assume these reports are on the public agenda. And if you want to look at where the spending's going and who's getting it, and to include at least the high school activity account. So I do have one question, and maybe it's not for this time, but maybe depending on the next time that these are published, is see how the cafeteria fund as we get closer. But
Oh,
not
yeah.
for tonight.
Actually, there is the food services projection is attached to these documents. Here, they are part of these reports.
No,
Yep.
just there was a variance change.
Yeah,
So
and
maybe
It's
again,
timing of revenues and all that, but we're looking at a small surplus again in that fund. So,
yeah, just again, maybe
Yep.
next time the report's on. Thank you.
Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes.
See, I'm here, and we're done before 9.